give you a few comments as a brother passes the time. Tonight's program has been videotaped, right? This program ought to be put up on YouTube.
That's right.
We ought to sign a little something before we leave, giving you permission to do it. Our young people are hungry and thirsty for information. Some of you know I work with Russell Simmons. And I work with a lot of hip-hop artists. A lot of them come up out of Ohio. They think they can't have a career here, so they go somewhere else. But they're from Ohio. Young people are expressive.
Yes.
Part of having a liberation situation is to express yourself. And a lot of times in our school system, Superintendent Ward, a lot of times young people feel that they really can't even express themselves. And so a child is mislabeled sometimes in need of special education, when they really need just some attention, some special attention. The whole tracking that goes on, where you are labeled something in the system, Brother Audrey's right, the system, you have to wear that jacket for the rest of your life. Now, I was in, I think it was interesting that the Vice President of China is here visiting. We've seen it on the news. China is emerging one of the world's largest economies. I was in Hong Kong about 6 weeks ago. I'm always I like to check out how people really are. So I went to a few social establishments. And I saw Chinese young people wearing dreadlocks, doing break dancing, trying to rap, trying to be like us. And why am I mentioning that to here when we're talking about education? Because sometimes we underestimate our own value.
That's true.
I'm talking about the value of our young people. They're so creative, they're so talented.
Yeah.
And they're looking for a system to guide them, encourage them on the right path. Education doesn't happen like that. It's a process.
Exactly.
And our young people need to be given that encouragement. In terms of the internet, I'm probably one of the oldest persons up in here. I know that we have an intergenerational crowd, but you know, back in the day, there was no internet. When I was in school, it was carbon paper. Y'all know what that is?
You're right.
And do a term paper, you had to have a 12-inch ruler to measure from the bottom of the page to get the footnote right. Now you push a button, you got spell check, grammar check, list of footnotes. Our young people ought to be geniuses in school. There's more opportunity today, more information accessible today.
That's true.
Now, I don't know about here in Ohio, but in New York they have a rule you can't bring the cell phone to school. So guess what happens? All the bodegas around the schools in New York, they rent a space for the students to put their cell phones. Multi-billion-dollar business. Because guess what? Every child got a cell phone. The question is, what has the cell phone been used for? What are we texting about? What are we emailing about? What are we Facebooking about? What are we tweeting about? What are we YouTubing about? That's a decision that we have to answer. The content of our character is the content of our experience.
Exactly.
The content of our consciousness. There was a time we weren't dropping out of school. We couldn't even get to the school. Now we take for granted the progress that we've made. My hometown, we couldn't even go to the library. Had to force our way into the library. Now I go back to my hometown, I was in North Carolina. Young people just walking up that library like the book's not even there. Because they've lost the sense of consciousness of our struggle. We take too much for granted today. We're talking about we want more freedom. We don't even use the freedom we got.
That's right.
Again, I'm a little passionate about this, like Dr. Fuller and all the panelists are, because we know that there's a solution to our problems. The whole purpose of this panel is just not to delineate what the problems are, it's to give us more deeper understanding, recognition, and fuller meaning of understanding. Pastor's right. How and what is we need to do from this day forward, from this night forward, to stay connected around it. Joining Baeo is one way. It's not the only way, but I would say if you just join Baeo and don't participate, don't join Baeo.
Exactly.
Baeo is for your active participation.
Exactly.
We need your active involvement in the struggle. It is a struggle. It's not going to be easy to turn this situation around, but it can be turned around. Please know that. I wouldn't be here tonight if I was a pessimist. We have to raise our own level of expectation about what it is we can do, what it is we're going to do to fight for our children. Not just to get an education, but get the best education. You cannot accept mediocrity. You cannot accept just sliding, skating through life. Close with this. In the Bible, it says that trial and tribulation is for purification. In other words, when you have trial and tribulation, you're supposed to be strengthened by it, not broken by it.
That's right, yes.
And if that's true, we ought to be the most purified people in the world. We done had the experience. Our young people should get to the top of the class without excuse. Now we got some people in the community who, if a young person does well in school, they're in trouble because they're doing well. Because the script has been flipped. And we idolize self-destruction rather than self-promotion. We got to change this paradigm. And that's why Baeo is here in Ohio. And that's why we're here tonight. But let's get your input. Raise your hand and we'll cut the mic. Okay, that's fine. And you can ask your question to any of the panelists, please.
Hi, my name is Candace Tubbs, and I'm actually a resident of Cincinnati, Ohio. I've got a two-part question for Dr. Ward and Dr. Williams. First, I want to say that this is a superintendent that I've had the pleasure of meeting with, and I've never heard one like her. And I've been all over the country because I am an activist. And I tell you, she's sincerely caring about his children. And we have to support her in everything she's trying to do. And I wish she could have shown her plan for the school. I was very impressed. In fact, I called one of our school board members when I saw your plan. I want to say that what I wanted to ask you, because what I realize is that now I'm born and raised in Mississippi, originally in Mississippi, and I've been an activist all my life. And I want when I was a freshman in college at the University of Cincinnati, only 3 years after I arrived in Cincinnati, in Ohio, I was tested for dyslexia, and I was dyslexic. My IQ was very high, but I had some issues in school because I learned different. But there was nothing in place for kids to be tested. You just went to that special class. Now, I didn't go to the special class, but for kids who were dyslexic, is there anything, any system, any process that would really diagnose that issue?
there's, let me just kind of step back. At an alarming rate, urban systems have a large percentage of students with disabilities. And unfortunately, we have to have skilled practitioners that can truly diagnose a disability versus behavior or lack of attention, and all of a sudden a child is labeled and labeled for life. So yes, there's many systems, procedures, processes, but let me just say this. I'm really careful about children, black children, that are sent to the intervention team to be tested. Because what I have found is we get tested and we get in and never out. And therefore, special needs becomes the pipeline to prison.
Yes.
So don't let me diagnose you. Let me help you another way. But anyway, I can't. No, but seriously, and that's something for this community. Look at the stats. Look at all of our stats. Look at every school stats, the percentage of students with disabilities. Ask the question, when you get labeled, what's the intervention so the child can get out? It's a significant question for this community.
Yes. Thank you. And I think my next question is for Reverend Dr. Williams. When Elvis Presley died, I remember being in Mississippi and my brother was beaten. And I remember being outside of our home, and my mom had visited my grandmother here in Cincinnati. And I remember the police officer came over and he said, "What you looking at, nigger?" And my brother, ignored him. And he was talking to his friend, and eventually he said, I said, "What are you looking at, nigger?" And his friend said, "Who's he talking to?" He said, "I'm talking to you, nigger." And at that point, my brother said, "You got to be looking at me in order for you to know I'm looking at you." And I was probably about 8 or 9 years old. And they were beaten. They were beaten bad. And I remember the churches. The line was longer, even though I was probably one of the front people in the line. It was longer than I can even imagine backwards. But the churches were at the forefront. They stepped up. They had the police department to release the boys and take them to the hospital. The churches were very much involved. And in this whole, all the issues of our community, what I've learned is that we have a lack of interaction with the churches. I came to Dayton and looking for an apartment. I got one for rent. But really, I came to Dayton fighting a case of injustice. And I could not believe that there wasn't one church that was involved. Now, I can share with you what my mother said. She said, "I'm afraid for you." She said, "You go into their city and you fight." I've not been able to get one church involved in a case of truly injustice. I mean, we've even got the View interested. We've got national stations, but we don't have church involved. Now, I say that to say I really would like to work with you and all the churches that are willing to get involved. In terms of this fight, I will share that I'm going to join and I'm going to be actively involved. But I also want to see you and I get together and bring the churches in on this. And so you can comment.
I'll just say that, I don't think this is working, but let me just say to you that I can only speak to my involvement, but I can tell you that it is interesting that you would raise that question right now, and actually what we're dealing with is a social justice prophet right now in Bible study and highlighting
how the struggle has not changed in thousands and thousands of years. If Amos were alive today, he'd be dealing with the same issues today, right? I think sometimes, though, people, again, like I say, bigger is not necessarily better. What you want to look for is commitment. I'd be happy to work with you, but I can only speak for me.
Thank you. As we continue to move forward with taking questions, I'm going to ask that we keep our comments to a minimum and our questions short so that we can take as many as possible. So I'll start here.
This is for Dr. Chavis. I am the publisher of the Black newspaper here. We've met several times before. And
Yes.
I constantly get data across my desk that talks about the state of black education. Just the other day, I got a report that said black children in urban cities are at the same point they were 30 years ago. Tell me, why is this? I mean, what's the real deal to why our kids aren't progressing to the, even with great educators like Dr. Ward here, who says she's not a doctor, but even people like Dr. Laura Ward here who we see are great leaders. We've had some great superintendents here in Dayton and who have done everything in their possible being to push the educational agenda forward, but we still seemingly are not making the progress. Why is that?
Thank you very much. It's a very good question, and I'll try to give you a good answer. As a publisher, you know that once upon a time, not now, we took the black press more seriously. You'd be surprised. The majority of black folks in Dayton don't read the black press.
Amen.
I'm just going to be very honest.
That's true.
And so, you can't expect, let me put it this way, the conditions of our children are a reflection of a larger reality that they're born into. They didn't create. Our young people did not create this mess. They're born into it. And so I don't want now to lay the burden all on them to change what they were born into. We have to be responsible. I take full responsibility that I don't think the civil rights generation did enough to pass the baton to the hip hop generation. I don't feel we did. Because if we had, well, see, the thing to me, every generation should rise to its own occasion. But if the generation in the present is not even aware of what the previous generation just went through, then they got to find all that out on their own, which I think is so unfair. Racism is still alive in America. But a lot of times we get uncomfortable even talking about it because we're embarrassed somehow. And so I think that we need to see the problems of education connected to our other problems. It is not an isolated problem, in my view. I think the economic condition in our community is worse than what it was 40 years ago. Although, according to the United States Census Bureau and according to the United States Department of Commerce, this year, in 2012, we will be $1 trillion consumer. Black folks in America spending $1 trillion. We're $1 trillion slaves who pay for our enslavement. You know, and so one of the things I get excited about a charter school is because charter schools are public schools, but it gives you another option. No one shoe is going to fit all of our feet. We should have more options in 2012, not less options. Some of us should have the right to choose not to go back to the plantation. I'm talking about psychologically. And so, I'm glad you raised the question. To me, it just means we got to work harder in behalf of our young people. I work now with all of our historically black colleges and universities. because the problem that they're facing starts in the elementary school and the secondary schools by the time they get to post-secondary. We have a problem. But do you know right now, the largest HBCU, do you know what the largest HBCU is?
Howard.
It's not Howard. It's not Southern. It's not Florida A&M. It's the University of Phoenix. Why am I going to say that? Because the University of Phoenix has 400,000 students, it's a $4 billion a year company, and 200,000 of those students are black students. The University of Phoenix has more black college students than all the HBCUs put together. Why? Because it's just what the class said. We don't innovate. We don't keep up with the times. We play catch up. And I'm a graduate of an HBCU. I'm working with them now to try to get them to catch up. Most of them are in financial trouble, even the ones here in Ohio. Because the revenue that could be going to their schools is going someplace else. Our black colleges, our black press, our black churches, black community, black families, all of it. These are things, I don't know why we're waiting for somebody else to do for us what God wants us to do for ourselves. This is not a negative. I see this as an opportunity. I see it as a responsibility. I promise you I give you short answer. But thank you, God.
My name is Mike Ward, and I want to say I'm already a very, very proud member of Baeo, and the reason why we're so successful here in Ohio because we have the best state director who had great leadership here in Ohio. My question is to Superintendent Ward. We know that science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM, is making a movement across the country. And here in the near future, there are plans to turn the old South High School in Springfield into a regional STEM center in dealing with agriculture. And we know that agriculture isn't really looked upon from the urban America as a viable job opportunity, but it is the fastest growing job industry in the country. And what I wanted to ask the superintendent, is there any plans, as part of her plan, that involves STEM, that also involves agriculture, fish farming, the fish industry? I know that Hocking College has 150 acres of a fish farm, and they supply all of Kroger's in southeastern Ohio with their fish products. So is there part of your plan that includes STEM, and how will STEM be used to vitalize urban youth's interest in agriculture and science, technology, engineering, and math?
Well, we have one of the greatest, and I'm going to be short. It's hard to be short, but we have the STEM king in the house tonight. David Lawrence is in the back. Created the STEM program. Stand up, David. Stand up, David. Get your props. Get your props. David created a STEM thread at Thurgood Marshall High School, and now is the chief academic officer of the regional Dayton STEM school. Let me just talk about instruction in STEM. The only way that we will get to where we need to be is to develop project-based learning that produces critical thinking. So we throw STEM around, but it should just be a natural part of the educational system. The days of it's math, take your math book out, do math, put your math book up, take your science, it's gone. It's gone. It's over. And that's innovation, and that's discernment of high quality education. So Thurgood Marshall will be in cooperation with the regional STEM schools. But to me, every child in our system should be STEM fellows. It's not just at one school, it's a way that you deliver instruction.
First, I want to say Assalamu alaikum, Brother Ben. Hope to see you at Savior's Day. I have 3 questions. I have one for Reverend Williams, Superintendent Ward, and Brother Marlon Aldridge. My first question is to Superintendent Ward. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches that the Second to the greatest knowledge, which is the knowledge of God, is the knowledge of self. A lot of our children just drop out of school because they don't see themselves in what's being taught. I went to one of the programs and I asked the young people, have they ever heard of Ida B. Wells, or have they ever heard of Sojourner Truth? They've heard of Lil Wayne, they've heard of Jay-Z, but as a person that said before, they don't know that knowledge of self. That's the question. Is there a way that we can control the curriculum to teach our children a greater knowledge of self? And if you can, I'll get these to Reverend Williams. They've taken God out of school. We're a spiritual people. If you could comment on that. And to Brother Marlon Aldridge, you know, how is it that you get an education that doesn't teach you how, if there is no job, to create a job for yourself? And if you could answer that.
Thank you. Superintendent Ward. So, the first thing I will say is, if you really poll our young people right now, they drop out because they have no connection to a system. Either a family, that's where gangs come in. If you really look at what's happening, they also feel that they can't be successful. But I can't help but to emphasize that standardized testing has destroyed the fabric of education. And we should be shouting, standing up. No child left behind? No, wait a minute. And standardized testing, who benefits? It usually destroys a child. It usually destroys. So this is where we have to work all together. The church, our nonprofits, our tutors, our mentors. We've got to have after-school programs to help building self. Because many times in the school day, it just will not get accomplished. This is really a community. We've got to band together.
Okay, just quickly, they've taken God out of the school, the whole argument. We teach, and the scriptures teach, that once a person receives Jesus as their Lord and Savior, then they're filled with the Spirit. And the purpose of the Spirit is to glorify God. And we also teach from the scriptures that greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. So if I have something that's in me, wherever I go, it goes. So what we teach our children is that wherever you are, so is God. And don't you dare act like you don't know Him because you're in school. They can take prayer out of school or any other place they want to, but they can't take it out of me. And if I'm in school or any other place, then I'm praying, and that's what we teach. And I'm saying, let them throw you off a brain. Right? And so again, we have to go back to Brother Aldridge. This is about the system that they've created that tells me that's going to restrict me. But it gets back to the whole psychological, organizational narcissism, that we know what's best, and you don't know what's best, and you especially don't know what's best for my child.
Well, we know that STEM, I want to touch on STEM since that's my background. I teach physics, and I'm part of the school system as well, teaching science there as well. But we talk about values first, and we got to start from the top. We talked about values, and then we have to look at our history. Our history is one, I'm talking about black people now. Our history is we're an oral people. Writing systems were not very important to us. Whereas in Europe, writing systems are everything. Okay? So you can't do analysis if you don't write. There is no way that you can be an analytical person and be very proficient at it unless you value writing. Our children don't write. Okay? So therefore, they can't be very analytical, especially when it comes to the sciences. We mentioned about these exams, these written exams, writing again, right? Our children don't do well. They can't be very analytical if they don't value analytical methods, if they don't value writing, okay? So we have to look at our value system first. We can set up any kind of system that we want to. We've done this before, and we failed. I mean, we can look at the church. The church used to do a whole lot of things back in the day in terms of economic development, banks, insurance companies, all of this. You don't see many of them doing that today. They weren't very good at it. I just want to be honest with that. And then, so we have to look at, we can set up any kind of system that we want to. You talk about entrepreneurship. We have to look at our value system first. And we have to attain values that allow us to be competitive. Okay, and I use the word competitive because if we look at the systems set around us, those systems are set up to maintain the status quo. Okay, what other kind of system would you set up if you were in power? What other kind of system would you set up? So we have to, in terms of education, and I want to touch on the entrepreneurship piece since we are talking about education. Even the word educate, we throw that out a lot. That's a very abstract term. What do you mean? What are you educating for? What you're educating for, and most of us, if we really thought about this, we are educating black children for service in white America. That's what we're educating our children for. So see, from an entrepreneurship standpoint, we're at a disadvantage already before we even get out the blocks. Okay, you're educating our best and our brightest for service in white America. So what does that leave in black communities? That leaves a disadvantage in the black communities. You won't have much entrepreneurship in the black communities because our best and our brightest have been assimilated to white America, number one. So you're going to have a problem right there. So we have to look at our value systems for one, and when we use terms like educate, we have to be very specific. Okay? I really can't address what we can do in terms of entrepreneurship until we look at some of these larger things like values. We look at that and reassess those values, and at least from my standpoint, once we do that, that lays the foundation for what's come next, which is to better organize our organizations with the best and the brightest that we have within our community. We can't just send our best and our brightest unidirectionally to white America, right? Let's be honest about it. And then look behind us and see all of the degradation that we see there, and then say to ourselves, how did this happen? We let it happen by the verbiage that comes out of our mouth.
We do recognize that it is 8 o'clock, and we said that we were going to only keep you until 8, so I kind of want to adhere to that. But I do want to get some of the questions. These two ladies here, I'm not going to be able to reach everyone, but I do think that our panelists will be available for a few minutes after we end. I don't want to drag it on all evening. I know all of our questions are important, and everybody wants to get their question answered, but we're not going to be able to do that in front of the whole audience. So I'm going to take his question and these two ladies here because they've been waiting for a little while. And then others, I'm going to ask that you grab the panelists before they leave and see if you can get your question answered at that time.
Hello, how you doing? I want to pose the statement of question to the panel in regards to the school to prison pipeline that was mentioned earlier. I'm real engaged with the Department of Youth Services in Circleville, Ohio. A group of us, we go out once a month to the juveniles, African-American males who dominate that particular facility, are housed there, and they're not the choir boys. And one of the common denominators amongst all of them is that they are uneducated or have dropped out of school. And there was mentioned earlier about the role model. And one of the things that was also brought to the attention of us, a group of us when we went out there, we started about a year and a half ago, is that in 15 years, there was only 2 organizations that had been out there to see those African Americans juveniles in the prison system out there. So we talk about school to prison pipeline, but is there anything that the school community is doing to bridge those individuals specifically African American males, back from the prison, back to the school, so that they can re-engage in our school systems and become productive again. Because one of the things that they all talk about is that they believe that education is important, but they need to know that they have people that they can trust and really have their best interests at heart. And those are some of the things that were missing. And these are the robbers, the killers, and all of that type of stuff. But they need another chance, and education is definitely a key to making that happen. So if anyone wants to comment on that.
By law, every urban district in the state of Ohio has to have an alternative school that accepts young people that come out of the juvenile system, transition them back into the school system. What we're finding is usually the juvenile system's educational program is so weak that those students not only lose valuable freedom, time, they also lose some of their academic skills. So I guess my challenge to you would be when you go to Circleville next time, you make sure you ask the administrators, where's the transition point for those young people? If they come to one of the Ohio 8 districts, which are the urbans, they will be greeted and they will go into an alternative school for transitional support.
Casey, if I could just jump in for a second. This is tough stuff we've been talking about tonight. And we take the risk of discouraging ourselves, those of you who came up and out tonight to be here. I just want to share, maybe our publisher in the front row would be inspired by these stories. We have some absolute phenomenal programs going on in Dayton. I mean, let's talk Stivers. Let's talk a building levy campaign that built how many new campuses? 26 new campuses. Voters voted yes 64% in that campaign. And look what that turned out. You know, the school choice options, the college promise program for our urban youth now, PACE, Baeo, Fast Forward, all the dropout center recovery programs that happen from a great coalition of community leaders and educators. Our area higher education, the neighborhood school center, was part of the DPS building project with Dayton Foundation, the Fifth Center UD, ISIS, DECA, our private schools, STEM. I mean, we need to document the impact of these programs. We can talk about all the bad news and feel really bad and join the crowd that's making the excuses. But I'd just like to encourage us to, there are some phenomenal people working in all these different kind of programs, and I know I've left some out.
My name is Joelle Jones from Dayton, Ohio. Just to piggyback on what you said, Dr. Wallace, it's, with all due respect, it is easy to speak about the minority of urban students who participate in activities such as drugs, dropping out, parents who do not participate in student conferences or the school, but that's the minority. That is not the majority. I work in the public school system. We have a phenomenal amount of students who are achieving in spite of the odds. We have parents who go to work 12 hours a day and still come to parent meetings. They're not parent conference meetings. And I think it's really important that, just to piggyback what you said, that we leave out here on a positive note too. How do we start to dismantle the negative conversation? We all know what's wrong with the system, but what's right with it? And when we talk about, you know, our black students, I think it's really important, and I grew up in that age, and my father was a Black Panther, and I understand black unity. But we have to get our kids to start thinking about a global economy, a global education, and being students of a 21st century world. And I know some people think that perhaps they can't do that, they don't know where they come from first. And that's important. But we have to be deliberate in our actions to prepare them for a world, not today, but 10 years from now. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm sure we all feel the same way, but But just to say again, which is there are some phenomenal things happening, and even though it may look dismal here in Dayton, get outside, in Dayton and outside of 675, where there are urban students, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, doing phenomenal things and making this country work.
Dan, thank you, sister. You're right. I just want to clarify, our point here is not to put a negative veil over everything that's going on. There are many positive things going on. The issue, though, for us, I think, if I can state it succinctly, is that we want to improve our situation so that more, I would say not just more, all of our children get that encouragement, get those options that the parents can have to select the best. Part of our problem as a people is that we have a lack of knowledge and lack of understanding, not only of the negative, but a lack of knowledge and lack of understanding of the positive. So that's the purpose of tonight, to get a realistic assessment, appraisal, and then we can all say, well, look, this is how I can fit in, this is what I can contribute, to put this together. There is no one single solution to all of this. That's why we call ourselves the Black Alliance for Educational Options, with an S, plural. There are many options, but we have to know what those options are and how we can participate in it. I think there's a final...
We have a final question.
Hi, my name is Yvonne Curry, and I'm a newly retired teacher from the Dayton Public School System. And what I would like to do is to speak on one very positive thing that is going on in our schools. I am now a tutor, after-school tutor, in an SES program, which is a 2-hour after-school tutorial program. And we work with students from kindergarten through 8th grade. And my career was basically with middle school students through high school. I'm a special educator, and I always heard, okay, all these things are happening with the little ones, and they're really needing a lot of assistance. So when I came out, I realized, of course, I was missing the students. And I wanted to go back, but I wanted to work with the little ones. So I talked to some people about the programs, and I said, if you need help with anyone from kindergarten through 3rd grade, I would like to be a tutor, because I really did not know what was happening with them, because I had spent so many years. So I just want to thank Superintendent Ward for having that program in Dayton. Many parents probably do not realize that it's here. I don't know all the technicalities of it. And I'd also like to say, Reverend Williams, that the site that I am tutoring in is a church. So this is a church that has decided to sign on to help our young students. So I just wanted to bring that to the forefront so people would know of something else very positive that is happening
here. You just mentioned SES, so I said educate. So here we go with educating. Supplemental Educational Services is what the acronym stands for. It's required under No Child Left Behind for students who are not proficient, and it is completely a volunteer choice from parents. But I will say this before I turn it back. I think all of us on the panel are about one thing, and I just want everyone to take away this. No matter if a child is in a public school, a charter school, or parochial, in this community, they will receive the highest quality education that they can get. And that's what we collectively should be striving for.
okay, thank you very much. I'll give the panel again once a hand. Once again, a hand. I'm going to call on Erica to close out. I want to thank all of you for coming, but please, if you have not filled out your form, fill out your form, and they're going to collect them at the end of the session. Thank you all for coming. Erica and Tracy.
Let's give our panel a round of applause. I just want to take the time to thank each and every one of them for their time. I know that we ran long, but when you have an issue such as education, it's difficult to respond to each and every issue that we may have. But one thing I will say, we cannot conquer what we can't confront. So we've got to face the reality of the challenges that are happening within our community and be able to be realistic about the solutions that we can bring to the table. It is my hope that you were able to get information tonight that will help you to become informed. Because first and foremost, you've got to have knowledge about what's going on and what's happening. And then now that you have that knowledge, what are you going to do with it? As Dr. Chavis said, we've got membership forms. Join the organization, commit financially to supporting an organization that's going to advocate not on behalf of any one institution or type of institution, but on behalf of children. And that's what Baeo does here in Ohio, as well as across the country. I am thankful to Dr. Superintendent Ward for being here, Dr. Wallace, Marlon Aldridge, Dr. Chavis, and Dr. Williams, because I believe that this was a diverse panel. We need to look at education from a myriad of different avenues. And we know that as a collective body, we can do wonders for our children, and it starts tonight. We can't walk away saying, oh, that was a great meeting, great information, and then we do nothing. I don't want to support them because they support this. One way you can get involved is become knowledgeable about who you are putting in office. Don't vote because of the color of the skin. Make sure you understand what they support and that what they support benefits you. That is one thing that you can definitely do. We are educating the communities. Dr. Ward mentioned that people need to be informed, and the parents. There are challenges with getting parents involved. That's the reality of the situation. We are a parent advocacy organization. Our 50%, if not more, of our work is committed and dedicated to working with parents, making sure that they understand what's out there and available to them, and helping them to understand what their child needs. Because just because an option exists doesn't mean it's going to be the best fit for your child. So in sharing the options, we're educating and helping them to understand where their child needs to be so that wherever they place them, they can be successful. So it's not just the parent, it's not just the teacher, it's not just the institution, it's all of us. So if we could quit placing blame and start accepting some responsibility, we can be far more effective in the lives of our children. So I'm hopeful that you gained something from tonight. I am available to all of you always. The information that was supplied to you, my contact information should be on it. If it isn't, my number is 222-7990. That's area code 937. Please call us, contact us. We're willing to partner with you. It's about building communities and building families. And that's what we're all about. So I encourage you to don't let this be the end, let it be the beginning. And let's work together to make better choices and better options and educate our parents. It's not one of us, it's all of us. So thank you for your time. I'm sorry that we ran over. Drop your memberships off. We need your support. Resources are essential to doing this work. The young lady, raise your hand over here in the pink pants. She's collecting membership. And then Erica is also collecting membership. We need your help. If you don't have it prepared today, you can contact us and mail it to our office. Thank you so much.